This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. We're pleased to announce that we are now selling our physical magazines directly on our website. You can browse by magazine title or search for a particular issue using the search bar. To pay us a visit, please click the link in the description. Enjoy. Nearly 80 years ago, old Jack Rollins was known throughout Clinton, British Columbia, as both a local character and a man of mystery. A small, gray-haired prospector, Jack became a genuine enigma when it was revealed he may have hidden a secret cache of gold, estimated to be worth $25,000 in today's money, that was never recovered. Although the authorities were satisfied they knew where Jack had gotten his gold, no one ever figured out what he did with most of it. Jack, who was also known by the name Sam Rollins, arrived in booming British Columbia around 1880, possibly just ahead of an angry American posse. One version of the story hints that he crossed the border to evade a sheriff, though the exact reason for the manhunt remains unclear. Still, the final events of his life in British Columbia may offer a clue. Once in Canada, Jack took up the humble trade of prospecting. For the next 12 years, he worked the land with little success, but managed to earn a solid reputation as a hard-working, honest, and modest man. That is, until July 19, 1892. On that day, Jack's image began to tarnish. Whether it was desperation after years of fruitless searching or a return to an old, more reckless lifestyle, something changed. It appears Jack resorted to an earlier profession, this time with a mask and a rifle. It was a hot summer afternoon when Stagecoach driver Billy Parker urged his tired horses down the dusty road near Post 98. Inside the coach, a lone passenger, a hide buyer, sat watching the barren countryside with little interest. At the time, the BX Stage Company gave little thought to highwaymen. In the remote stretches of caribou country, bandits had slim chances of escape. Sometimes the heavy iron box beneath Billy's seat was empty. But not this time. That day, it carried $13,000 worth of gold dust and nuggets, along with 2 gold ingots valued at $2,000. Billy had transported such riches before without incident, which may explain his shock when a masked man suddenly emerged from the jackpine trees near Bridge Creek Hill and ordered the stage to stop. From his seat, Billy looked down to see a short, gray-haired man pointing a rifle directly at him. "Throw down that box," the masked man barked, gesturing with his weapon. Billy, stunned, obeyed. The bandit then waved him on. Whipping his horses, Billy sped off, leaving behind the stranger and the gold. A posse arrived several hours later, but they found no trace of the robber or the treasure. A fresh rainfall had erased any tracks. Man and strongbox had simply vanished. News of the daring robbery spread quickly. Descriptions of the bandit were sent east to Kamloops and south along the Caribou Trail into the Fraser Canyon. Authorities believed that if the suspect had tried to flee along these main roads, he would have been spotted. That led them to believe he was still hiding somewhere in the wilderness nearby. Despite determined efforts by search parties, neither the man nor the missing gold was ever found. Gold! They've struck gold on Scotty Creek. The cry echoed through Clinton like a thunderclap, shaking the quiet town into chaos. Men and boys rushed out frantically toward the site, 20 miles north of Ashcroft, while grizzled old-timers scratched their heads in disbelief. "That doesn't make sense," muttered one old prospector. "That creek's been picked clean. Even the Chinese miners gave up on it years ago." And yet, the rumors were true. Old Jack Rollins, a familiar and once laughed-at figure in town, had apparently hit pay dirt. With a crew made up of Chinese laborers and local indigenous workers, Jack had begun working a claim on Scotty Creek just a month earlier. Despite skepticism from the townspeople, his persistence had finally paid off. From sunrise to sunset, Jack's team worked 5 ancient sluice boxes. Within 3 weeks, he proved his doubters wrong, hauling out pouch after pouch of gold. Meanwhile, other miners up and down the creek found almost nothing but dust and disappointment. First came whispers of amazement, then came suspicions. Why was it that only Jack Rollins had found gold, when every inch of Scotty Creek had already been scoured for years? Jack's behavior only fueled the gossip, Once known as quiet and easygoing, he now acted hostile and secretive. He warned trespassers off his claim at rifle point and forbade his workers from speaking to anyone outside the camp. Such behavior was strange, even for the rough-and-tumble mining world. Twice a week, Jack sent pouches of gold dust by BX Stage to the safe of storekeeper F.W. Foster in Ashcroft. The richer he became, the more resentment simmered among nearby miners. Eventually, suspicion turned into confrontation. One hot afternoon, a frustrated young miner stormed into Jack's camp and demanded answers. "We've worked this creek just as hard," he growled, "so why are you the only one striking gold?" To everyone's surprise, Jack didn't ignore him. In a rare moment of explanation, he said he had spent weeks examining every rock and shifting gravel endlessly without success, until one day, he stumbled upon the right spot. Word spread that Jack had found a small but incredibly rich pocket of gold. But the other miners weren't convinced. It just didn't add up. How could one man find gold in a place that had already been combed over 100 times? With no other explanation, the miners came to a decision. They would take their concerns to the law. Two respected miners, Gus Erickson and Ed Wright, traveled to Ashcroft and relayed their suspicions to Constable Burke. The constable listened carefully but remained cautious. Without solid evidence, there was no crime he could act upon. Then Erickson and Wright asked a curious question. Why does Rollins only strike gold when his men are off eating dinner? That sparked a memory. Constable Burke recalled the unsolved Stagecoach robbery on July 19th, where $15,000, mostly in gold dust, had vanished. The idea that Rollins might be connected crossed his mind. But unless they could recover the two missing gold bars, it would be nearly impossible to prove the dust came from the robbery. Despite his doubts, Burke agreed to investigate. Disguised as a prospector, he traveled with Erickson and Wright to Scotty Creek. He watched quietly from a distance as Rollins continued his strange routine. Sure enough, it seemed he only discovered gold when his crew was away. The surveillance gave Burke enough reason to act. Just as Jack finished paying off his men and was preparing to leave the site, claiming his work there was done, Burke approached. "You're not going anywhere, Jack," the constable said. "I'm arresting you for the BX Stage robbery. You're coming with me to Clinton to straighten this out." Jack, now looking suddenly weary, offered no resistance. He protested weakly, but surrendered without a fight. When the case went to court, it was built mostly on circumstantial evidence. But to many, it seemed clear. Old Jack Rollins may not have found a miracle gold strike. He may have simply found a way to launder stolen treasure into clean gold dust, one pouch at a time. At the trial, Stagecoach driver Billy Parker testified that Jack Rollins was of similar build and age to the masked robber who had held him up, but he admitted that he couldn't make a positive identification. The lone passenger on the coach was of even less help. He confessed that after catching a glimpse of the rifle, he had dropped to the floor and seen nothing else. What raised more suspicion was a striking coincidence. The stage robbery had occurred on July 19th, and just 2 days later, on July 21st, Rollins made his first gold deposit with storekeeper F.W. Foster. Even more telling, the prosecution revealed that when authorities examined Jack's claim after his arrest, not a single flake of gold was found. "I cleaned it out," Rollins said with a sneer. But there was one damning piece of evidence that he couldn't brush off with sarcasm. Fred Hussey, superintendent of police, took the stand and delivered what many saw as the final blow. He explained how he and Constable Burke had seized the gold Rollins had deposited at Foster's store. They examined it carefully under magnification, and what they found was impossible to ignore. According to Hussey, every creek leaves a unique signature on its gold. Nuggets from a single stream are usually shaped by the same forces, smoothed by tumbling currents or left rough near the source. Scotty Creek would be no exception. But Rollins's collection of gold was wildly inconsistent. Some nuggets were polished smooth, others were jagged and raw. There was simply no way all of it could have come from a single creek. The only plausible explanation, Hussey said, was that the gold had come from multiple sources, or from the BX Stage Company's stolen strongbox. The jury, made up mostly of minors, needed little time to reach a verdict. Jack Rollins was sentenced to 7 years in New Westminster Penitentiary. But the story didn't end there. 2 years later, Rollins, nearly 60 years old, vanished from the prison. Like the infamous highwayman Bill Miner, he had escaped and disappeared without a trace. Despite manhunts and alerts, he was never seen again. To this day, old-timers in Clinton and Ashcroft still wonder, did Jack make it back to his hidden stash before vanishing across the border? Some believe the intense search following his escape would have made it impossible for him to return to Scotty Creek or anywhere near it, but others are not so sure. Years after the robbery, a railroad survey crew stumbled upon a rusted, battered strongbox hidden in a brush-covered gully, just 5 miles from Bridge Creek Hill, the site of the original holdup. It matched the description of the stolen BX chest. Still, mystery lingers. Of the original $15,000 stolen in 1892, about $12,000, including 2 gold ingots, was never recovered. At today's prices, that lost fortune would be worth around $25,000. And according to local legend, it may still lie buried within reach of old Jack Rollins' camp on Scotty Creek.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.